You're listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with host Doc Martin. How do you step into your maximum potential? How do you connect your spiritual drive with your physical path? Get ready to meet the maximum you the world needs on Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin now. So I thought I would do some short clips, well, it's more than a clip, episodes on some of the esoteric things about energies, about our place in the universe, and things that I've learned after, going on probably 30 years of studying with different energy healers, different shamanic teachers, reading a lot. I like to get as much information as I can. I love to learn this stuff. But the first thing I want to talk about is the death force. So many of us walk around, even if we don't say it out loud, with this interior worry or panic about death. Now, intellectually, you know everything dies. And if you believe, as I do, that our soul is eternal and that we experience multiple experiences that we interpret as lifetimes, so as some cultures and mysticisms believe, as I do, in reincarnation, then death isn't something scary. Now, that being said, nobody wants to stop this lifetime too soon, but everything dies, and we know that intellectually. But how do we work and walk with that in our waking life? So I know Carlos Castaneda's teachings, what Don Juan taught him, death is walking by our side all the time. There is in the universe, just as a matter of existence, a death force, just as there is a life force. And that death force can come on more quickly or be held back some based on our beliefs and what we allow into our reality. So let's talk about that a little bit. The death force is present, and let's just pick this apart. It's present in every little change we make. When we decide to evolve, to grow, to shift our behavior, to take on something new, something gets left behind, and we can say that that has passed on, that has died. Things that are no longer useful to keep in our awareness, ways of being that we decide we're not going to do anymore. We're closing the book and basically putting that thing, that behavior, that thought, excuse me, to rest. But the trick is knowing that, how do we cultivate the life force? And when the death force is active, how do we make friends with it? And how do we make it smooth and less upheaval to us, less challenge to us? Oh, excuse me, allergies are bad. So we can think about death as our constant companion, because it is. Every day when I drive to work, it's usually in the dark, even in the summertime, because I go in really early. The sun hasn't come up yet. And I live in rural Pennsylvania, where there are deer and all kinds of animals that cross the road. And I'm not a slow driver, I'll admit it. I like to get where I'm going. But I often think about, what if something darts out? A bunny rabbit, a possum, a raccoon, a deer, I don't want anything hurt. I don't want anything dead. And so I have cultivated and practiced daily a mantra, or you could say a ritual prayer, that I say nothing dies on this trip to work. And I will talk about unseen helpers in another episode, but I say the prayer for the death force to stay on the side of the road, not crossing. Nobody gets hurt, no harm, no foul. And that practice so far has kept me well in many, 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 many trips in the dark, and in the wintertime coming home in the dark. But that discussion, or that realization that death is right here, it's a force, it is active in, we have cells, we have skin cells that die all the time, we have gut cells that die all the time. You cut yourself and that tissue has died and new tissue grows. The death force is present in every single relationship, every single action, every single biochemical mechanism. And so for me, the trick is, well, it's not really a trick, but the learning is to recognize that it is present and to negotiate using my beliefs, my intention, that stays to the side, or that if it's necessary, and this is part of my prayer in the morning, for those things, the chapters that need to be closed, the things I'm stepping away from, the things that need to pass on, that it is done with the pure death force of the universe, with the purest of closure. And in that purity, to clean it, do it swiftly, cleanly, smoothly, accurately, without harm to me, so that it can happen, but that I am returned to the life force smoothly, completely, securely, safely, accurately. Now, this practice serves me well if all it does is set my beliefs correct for the day, if all it does is assuage my anxiety of something darting out in the middle of the road. But that cultivation of your recognition that the death force walks beside you is a very important awareness. Carolyn Myss has a practice, and I think I'm quoting this accurately, that every evening before she goes to bed, and she teaches before you go to bed, you call your soul back to you. So let me explain what that means. Throughout the day, you have multiple interactions, multiple energies you send out into your environment, thoughts, actions, behaviors, and many of those don't go exactly as we wanted, but a piece of our energy field travels with those. So if those remain constantly projected outward without a regrouping, we can be depleted. And if we unwittingly, or in a fit of anger, or we get miffed about something, we send something out that we're not totally proud of, in the evening is your time to call that back to you. And I see that as bringing all of the tendrils of your energy field back to home, back to base, to shore yourself up, to bring your power back. But it also serves as closing off any connections you've opened to something you really don't want to stay connected to. A bad relationship, something you've done and you did it, probably wasn't as clean or as smooth as you could have been. And to regroup all of that, Now, Don Juan taught Carlos Castaneda about recapitulation. Recapitulation, and this is just my understanding of it. So if you have something different, please keep what you want to keep. But recapitulation is a review. And in Carlos's teachings, it was a review of life, of the decisions you made, of the things you did. It's very much like the daily recapitulation that Carolyn Myss teaches. Recapitulation to me is a recognition that you own and you're responsible for every projection you have put out there in the universe in this lifetime or past or future. And that you stop and you reflect and you have awareness, which allows you to close some of those, allows you to say you're not going to do those anymore, allows you to put those to rest. And that is the good workings of the death force, to close off those things that no longer serve you, no longer belong to you, that you want to move on from, and the recognition if there's an error, if you've done something that's harmful to someone else, that you acknowledge it, call it back, and repaint it in your mind, in your intention and belief, as the way you would have done it, so that you are rewriting. And we can rewrite. We can actually rewrite the past. But on a daily basis, you can say, okay, I was kind of not very nice to that person today. And in your mind's eye, in the time before you go to bed, you say, I'm so sorry. And that's where I also see how Ho'oponopono mantra does a really good job. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Calling those things back is a mini death. You're shutting down those parts, those projections that don't serve anymore. And you are claiming a healthier, more vibrant, more authentic, more ethical, and more, I said vibrant, but more alive you. So the death force walks alongside of us, and we should try to make friends with it. And in saying that, I mean acknowledge it, see how it's working, see how every change we make puts something to rest, puts something in the grave. And recognizing that that is the absolute balance, necessary balance of living, of moving forward. So start to be aware of the things that die in your life. And maybe it's fall is coming and the things in your garden are dying because after the winter, they grow again. Maybe it is behaviors you did and now you're aware, so you don't do them anymore. Okay, bye-bye. So the death force is valuable. It can be your ally. It's there anyway, whether you choose to align yourself with it or not, whether you choose to see it as necessary, but it can be your companion. And you can see, if you look closely at the recognition of its value and of the fact that it is part of your growth and your evolution. Something ends, something starts. Something else ends, you step up the next step on the ladder, something else starts. And it goes, that is the cycle, isn't it? And you know that intellectually. But I'd really like it if you would try to see the inner workings of it and the energetics of it. And I think you'll find that it's really, really neat to recognize your growth in terms of what has moved on and what is yet to be. Sounds good, right? So, what's another important esoteric about energies? And I think the thing that I might have been more surprised to learn over the years I've studied energetic healing and mysticism is the miraculous, the thing that is happening alchemically. So, alchemy is something that many old time scientists and mystics would seek out. It was a thought we've heard about, hoping they can find some way to convert into gold. But it was also spiritually how to find the way to have a divine union with spirit or God or whatever you're wishing to connect to. But for me, in the day-to-day world, alchemy is those times when 2 + 2 is 5, and that we can actually steer things that are happening in our life to bring about the miraculous. Now, there have been instances in healing that have shown this that are very surprising and startling, and we think, oh my, that's a miracle, but it'll never happen to me. And I just want to direct you to look and pay attention to books by Joseph Selby, Selbie, and he wrote The Physics of Miraculous Healing. And he describes many very well-known miraculous transformations of somebody who was literally on death's door to vibrant and healthy. A woman who hadn't walked in 16, she was wheelchair bound 16, 20 years, and a voice tells her to get up and walk, and she gets up and walks, and her muscles are no longer atrophied in the blink of an eye. But he explains the physics behind it. And I love the things that he does because he really gets in there and understands the physics and the science, and that is not very different from the mystical. He puts the two together. So anyway, that's a thing you should check out. But alchemy to me is when you want something miraculous to happen and you want a combination of things in the universe to go a certain way, and it seems totally out of the ordinary. It seems unexpected. Can we really say that that might happen? It just is, but you want it to happen. And we have all tried to be magicians of our lives. We've all tried to be our own inner wizards. So I want to remind you that there are forces in the universe. Okay, on face value, you know that already. As aware as we are about thunder, lightning, wind, global geopolitical things that are happening, there are collective thought forms that are going around, but there are celestial forces. We think we know, of course, how the moon plays a role in our tides on Earth, but there are planetary forces. And these unseen forces are what the mystics, the ancient mystics, were able to tap into and harness to manifest and to create miracles. So those alchemical events where magic can happen, where 2 and 2 is 5, or maybe even 7. Who would have ever thought of that? So how do you invite a magical alchemy into your life? Because there are possibilities that exist in the universe, infinite number of possibilities. And what you experience, and the mystics will teach you this, and Joseph Selby's book will explain it really, really well. Those things are locked in by your beliefs. So the things that you experience are through the tunnel through which you look. And Don Juan taught that as the assemblage point. That is the way I describe it, your window of perception. But if you're looking here, you're not seeing here. And there are infinite possibilities outside the window through which you look. So, what can we do to allow another possibility in? Well, the first thing you have to do is open your window. And that starts with the willingness to allow, the willingness to say, maybe it could be. Because what also happens, and I see this in my patients all the time, if you have decided that it is never going to be for you, it will never be. But as soon as you allow the possibility, even if you're not convinced, but you're willing to say maybe, then that window opens and you see more possibilities. And if our belief dictates our realities, and I believe that they do, and I'm not great at it yet, I've been working it, but if your belief actually creates your destiny, and I believe that it does, then shifting that belief should become a priority for you when you want a miraculous outcome. So first you open, even if it's as small as saying, today I will suspend disbelief. Today that disbelief lives in my mind, but I'm going to park it over to the side because I'm going to say, what if? Maybe. Let's see. And then you open. And when you open, that shifts your assemblage point. That allows different energies. If you look at the energetics of it, that actually allows different energetics to flow into your system. So shift over by opening, suspend your disbelief. And it's not easy at first. It is seriously not easy. We have been conditioned with the things we all collectively agree on. And the idea that 2 + 2 = 5, everyone will laugh in your face. But if you allow that can be so, that if you allow that in some part of the existence of your energy field, the existence of your soul, your spirit, is another path, another reality where magic happens, where 2 + 2 is 5, can be 7, it can be whenever you want it to be, then those forces can come and act with you to create something you never saw possible. And alchemy is the way you can create your destiny. Because if you're willing to let it be something other than this, we have a momentum. We have everything the genetics we were born with, the biologic conditioning, the family upbringing, the family lineage of energies through your ancestors that lives through you. You are on a track. Now, Alberto Villoldo taught us in my shamanic training, and I love this image. If you shine a flashlight forward, you see that the majority of the light is here. But you can also see the spread of that light out. It's not as strong, but it does not live in that tunnel, in that momentum tunnel. And so you want to put your awareness to the fringe, because the fringe is where the possibilities expand. And you want to recognize that maybe everything about you is the flashlight shining the small beam on the wall, but then the scatter is where the possibilities happen. The scatter is where the magic lives. The scatter is where 2 + 2 is 5 or 7 or 9 or 100, whatever, however you want that to be. Living in a mindset, and set is sort of a bad expression because it depicts fixed and locked down. Living in that mindset on this idea that we are right here and that's all that we are, that has to be broken free. And that doesn't come easily, I'll admit that. But if you start by opening and allowing that it could be different, and then you start playing with the possibilities that are in the fringe, in the side, in the scatter, and you start allowing those things to be present in your life, you allow that it could be true. And these people in whom miraculous healing happened because they believed it could be different. They believed because something happened to shift their set, fixed mind and blow it open to a more miraculous, a more expanded, a more possible life universe. So alchemy is, I see it as my personal search for how to transmute into gold. And for me, the gold is a better action as a human on this earth, a cleaner spirit, a more authentic life, a more ability to provide service to humanity, a bigger way to move humanity forward. In my little actions, what can I do to move the needle so we evolve? And we evolve in ways that can be magical and mystical and alchemical. So when you go to search for the gold, what gold is it you want in your life? Do you want a miraculous healing? Do you want something new to manifest? You have to talk in your inside about and think about alchemy, because you are going to now align yourself with different possibilities, with different expressions, with ways that you are off of your one-track mind, and you are now a train jumping tracks, parallel realities, side trips in this expanded assemblage point, in this scatter of the flashlight beam, everything that you can do to be outside this hardcore, already set, fixed, blow it open and create the gold that you want in your life. One of the other, for me, most exciting and personally satisfying and actually very evolving for me was my recognition when I started studying shamanism of things I might have intuited or had a sense of, but that became very clear. And that was unseen world that included forces of nature, celestial events, mythical creatures, cultural lore. That started to become real because the more I interacted with it, the more I could see the presence, I could feel it, I could just know of its existence. So let's talk about these unseen helpers, these unseen forces, which you can align with and ally with. You've heard many stories of magical beings, of unicorns, of fairies, of nature spirits, of mermaids. You've also heard culturally of cultures, Ireland, Iceland, probably Eastern Europe, of the little people. And I think it's Sweden, they have tomtens, which are these little gnome-like beings that guard the farm and they stay with the animals. Leprechauns and hobbit people. And Iceland has a lot of those. And in many cultures, they recognize that there are these forces that they have, I'll use the word as interpreted and described as particular beings. The Native Americans and the ones we know the most in common culture, or Southwest Indians, very much understood the forces of thunder, of lightning, of nature, and the beings that existed all around. When they prayed for rain, they talked to the rain gods. The Mayans were very close with things that could travel underground, such as the jaguar that would make the trip at nighttime to go underground and come back up in the morning, having transmuted something on the journey. The Quetzalcoatl. So there's all these things that exist, and we can sense the forces of those. And over thousands of years, we have assigned characteristics to them. We have given them names and we have cultivated relationships. So how did this give value to me? And I have a couple of things to tell you about that. When I was doing my spiritual training and I was studying with many different teachers, a group of women also interested in spiritual quest traveled to Sedona. And in Sedona was a man, a Dutchman from the Netherlands, who had lived there for a while, who studied the ley lines of the vortexes, the energy vortex and the ley lines of Sedona. And in doing so, he connected with the energetics of forces under the earth and also connected with dragons. So, I'm very connected to the earth, but dragon, I ain't never connected with a dragon. So we take a hike and we go up to one of the plateaus, one of the tables on the top of the red rocks, and a mesa. And he points out a particular spot where we sit and we meditate. And in his travels and hiking trips, he has connected with the energies of all of these places. So he said, this is where the earth dragon, one of the earth dragons, comes forth. I'm like, okay. Well, we're sitting in meditation and my dog decided to join us while we're talking about dragons. This I could sense in my mind's eye, I could see this gorgeous celadon green, large, powerful female dragon coming up out of the earth. And I wasn't scared. You would think dragon. And this was way back before Game of Thrones. And, so dragons weren't exciting unless you were maybe, of the pagan traditions. But that dragon came forward and powerful and beautiful. And I connected instantly. I felt good in its presence. And as I told people, this was 20 years ago, as I told people, I said, it came home with me. And I started asking that dragon, and we'll just say it's energies. You don't have to see it as a dragon, but there was an energetic force. And I started asking that it come forward in the healings, in the shamanic healings I was doing, and to assist me. And this dragon and I, this energetic, this space in the universe that I would travel to and connect with, began to be more present in my life, to the point where I was doing a healing. And afterwards, I said to the client, how did you feel? Well, the transformation was really, really powerful. And I said, well, I'll just share with you that I asked my dragon to come and help. And she said, oh, but I saw it. And she described this Celadon green dragon. Now, I had not said anything. So how does she know that? And that's the force that was present in the room, in her mind, in my mind, in the connection between us. And that alliance has been wonderful for me, has been wonderful in the times I've been anxious, that I feel protected, in the times where I want to remind myself to step into the magical, to allow something different, something bigger than myself. And this alliance and this helper. Now, I have to say, when I say my dragon, I do not mean possession. I do not mean that it belongs only to me, that I'm going to keep it in a box and open only. It is more like saying, this is the one I connect to. And since that time, and I think it's because as I've evolved, I've allowed different energies into my field, into my awareness. I have been joined by many other dragons, and they have been my helpers when I try to spiritually shift something in my life. The other thing that I have connected deeply to, and this was when I traveled again with a spiritual group to the Yucatan, and I remember a meditation where I was down in a cave, very much like in the Mayan culture to go down into Xibalba. And I was down in a cave and I couldn't find my way out. And it was unnerving, to say the least. And all of a sudden, this big mountain lion, so a jaguar, but tawny jaguar, puma, came forward and stepped and opened up the roof of the cave and stood tall on his back feet, putting his front feet to the stars, and created a bridge for me to climb out. Now, in my shamanic training, which was ongoing at that same time, one of the things the jaguar was described as was being the rainbow bridge between life and death. And as I reflected on the training that happened later than this experience, I was recognizing that this puma, I call it a jaguar, but it was not a black or leopard print. It was a tawny puma that reached and allowed me to climb out of Xibalba, which was death and the underworld, to the stars. And that was very reassuring to me. That was very protective. And that jaguar has since stayed with me. And the field and the energetics of that dragon, that I keep saying dragon, they're very close, both of these to me, that jaguar holds for me have been very, very important. So in shamanic training, we would spend time and we studied in each of the cardinal directions. So the south, the west, the north, the east. And there were archetypes, animal energies that were associated with each of the directions. And it was the direction where we were learning about the eagle, and the eagle giving you a higher vision, the eagle being able to see things from way up, that you can get out of the micro and see it differently. And I remember I was driving home from this particular training, and we had spent the week before we met up in person aligning ourselves with the eagle energy. And I'm driving down this road, and all of a sudden, bam, something hits my windshield. And I was devastated because I was certain that it was a hawk. And I pulled over to the side of the road. I'm looking for this battered body of this hawk. I even walk back hundreds of yards to find it, looking for it, worried that it was killed, worried that it was wounded, and I could not find it. But I was devastated because I had worked so hard in an alliance with hawk energy that the idea that I had somehow killed it or hurt it, or I was beside myself. So I get back in the car, and I'm almost in tears, but I couldn't find it. And you could see a little dusting of a blood spot on my windshield. So I knew I hadn't imagined it. And up ahead was this really, really bad accident. And they were just starting to let people through. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me that that incident with the hawk slowed me down, stopped my forward motion, took me off of the path for 10 minutes, because literally, had I been there 10 minutes earlier, I would have probably been involved in this crash that people died. So then I reflected on the alliance that I had sought out and that I had cultivated and that I had asked for, and how here I had a helper in an unseen way, in a way that I could have never predicted. But somehow that interaction with that hawk hitting my windshield stopped me, prevented my possible death. So an alliance that had grown, that had occurred, that I had developed a connection. And so after that time, I was very aware to always cultivate that connection. And I look when I travel past fields, I look and see, so there are oftentimes hawks flying overhead, and I feel very connected to nature, very connected to their magic. So unseen helpers are all around you, and you can cultivate and align yourself with these energies. I love being in the garden, and I love thinking about the energies of the different plants. And I love the hummingbird moth that'll show up on the flowers. I love the dragonfly that is over the pond next to the garden. And I feel connected, and I feel part of something bigger. I feel part of the earth, and therefore part of the universe. So you can start to align yourself with other energies, ones that you may not see, but when you start to feel into it, you can feel their presence. You can walk in the woods and feel the energies of the nature spirits. Now, I'm giving these names. You might call it something different, but you can feel the forces of the universe that are unseen. You can feel the forces at play. Now, many people connect to the stars. Many people are connected to the Pleiades, Orion, anything like that. I am I don't spend my time connecting with celestial beings and energies because I'm very much a nature girl. Give me any animal, give me any spot in nature, and I'm there. I'm also better in the woods and the fields and a brook and a forest than I am in the ocean. Many people connect with whales and dolphins. And I think that's a lovely, lovely connection to grow. That's just not where I go. I don't go there quickly and easily. Although I will tell you one thing. This is a neat story. I'm training at the Monroe Institute, which is a premier institute for understanding consciousness. And we are doing in our rooms, we are listening to tapes and taking us to different spaces in the universe. And Bob Monroe calls them different focuses. That's how he teaches it. Or he's not alive anymore, but how his teachers are trained to teach it. Those are different, can be different levels, can be different, you can call them different dimensions, but it's connecting with different energies. And afterwards, we're sitting around and we're sharing how we experienced an energy. And I said, I'm in this meditation, and all of a sudden, an orca jumps up, breaches in front of me, startles me. I'm in meditation, this orca shows up. And the orca says to me, and I'm sharing this with the group, the orca says to me, a switch was flipped. And I knew that this orca meant why the orca that was in captivity in SeaWorld killed the trainer. I mean, I knew that in an instant when this orca said that. A switch was flipped. And I knew also that what he said was this orca went crazy, went schizo after years of captivity. And I was in my meditation, I am crying. And as I'm telling the story to my classmates, I'm crying. And I said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry for the things that we humans have done. I am so sorry. So here was a connection that I didn't ask for, I didn't seek out, but it felt valuable. And it felt valuable to know that on many levels we connect with every being on this planet, every energy. And it had meaning because my classmates were deeply moved, because they understood the switches that could get flipped when you cage something that shouldn't be caged. And that act of being sorry was, and it sounds like, what can I do to have fixed that? But that act of being sorry was, in a way, the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. And when we connect to these energies, we are making something right again. We are renewing something again in ourselves. We are doing our best to make things right between humans and our world. Even if it starts small with me saying I'm sorry to an orca that breaches in front of me in a meditation. We are connecting more deeply to the forces of our world, to things that can be our helpers, and making it right between us. And that's also the concept of reciprocity. So when you dig in to sit and commune with these forces, and you sit in your sacred space, and you say, today I want to connect to the energy of dragon, the energy of jaguar, the energy of the whales. Make sure that when you're asking to be shown something or to be given an alliance, to be allowed a connection, that you offer something back. Because one of the key, integral, foundational teachings in energy work, in shamanism, in the mystical, is reciprocity, and that you give as much as you take. There has to be a balance, because you cannot keep taking from a force and energy of being that you seek an alliance with. That alliance will not last. There's no reason for that alliance to last if it's out of balance. So just remember, when the jaguar appears to you in the cave and offers you the ladder out to reach the stars, when the orca breaches in front of you, when the dragon appears and later shows up in your healings and adds to the transformational power, remember to say, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing me something new. Thank you for adding to my ability to navigate this world with more power. Reciprocal balance. And cultivate your unseen helpers. Cultivate these alliances, because these forces are all around you, and they're there waiting to interact with we humans if we open and allow and be grateful when the connection happens. Thank you to the hawk. And thank you for trying to open your connections. Again, that's how we make our evolution better, brighter, more powerful, and we make our connection to the earth stronger. So thanks.
You've been listening to Maximum Medicine Radio with Doc Martin. Tune in next time while the doc talks health, spirituality, and the impact your beliefs have on every part of who you are, body and soul. Doc Martin unpacks the challenges we face as human beings. To learn more about Doc Martin and Maximum Medicine, visit www.sharonmartinmd.com.